Okay. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the second public information meeting for the Newton Corner Long-Term Planning Study. My name is Patrick Snyder, and I'm the MassDOT project manager for this effort. Thank you all for being here this evening. We're grateful to have you here, including elected officials and members of their staff in attendance. Welcome. Thank you for being here. So before we jump into the meeting, we're just going to go over some Zoom procedures so that we're all on the same page. We will have the opportunity for discussion with questions and comments later in tonight's presentation. If you'd like to share comments or questions during the presentation itself, you can use the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. You can also click the buttons at the bottom left-hand corner of your screen to toggle your audio and video options. We're hosting tonight's meeting as a Zoom meeting, not a Zoom webinar. We normally host these as webinars, but tonight we're doing it as a meeting so that we can use breakout rooms. So please keep that in mind. Since you have that audio and video functionality, we ask that you remain unmuted if you're not speaking. If you do want to speak, you'll have the opportunity later in the meeting in the breakout rooms or during the public comment period, at which time you'll be able to click the raise hand button, also at the bottom of your screen, or click Alt-Y on the keyboard. If you're dialing in on the phone tonight, you can dial *9, which will raise your virtual hand. I also want to mention is not showing up on the bottom of your screen. Click the More button, and it should pop up. If you're unable to access the internet or have technical problems tonight, you can call into the meeting on the phone at +1 646 876 9923. The webinar ID and passcode on this screen are incorrect. They are 819-874-6468 for the webinar ID, and the passcode is 287240. If you do not write that down, that's fine. It's in the confirmation email that Zoom sent you when you registered for this meeting. And finally, if you're watching this meeting on a computer, you can use the view button at the top right of your screen to adjust your view settings. We also have closed captioning available tonight. It's automatically generated by Zoom, and you can activate it with the button at the bottom of your screen. Please note it's not always accurate. If you do have trouble with the meeting technology during the presentation today, you can call Zoom tech support at 1-888-799-9666. And continuing on, we have some meeting procedures. We do want to note that tonight's meeting is being recorded. By continuing attendance in tonight's meeting, you are consenting to be part of the public record. MassDOT may choose to retain and distribute the video, images, audio, and/or chat transcript from today's meeting. Once again, as it is a meeting and not a webinar, everyone can toggle their audio and video settings, so please bear that in mind. If you're not comfortable being recorded tonight, you can just keep your camera and microphone off or excuse yourself from the meeting. Since it is being recorded, we will be posting it on the study website at a later date. Later in the meeting, we'll have opportunity for comments during breakout room sessions and general questions and answers during a public comment period after that. We welcome all questions and comments during this meeting, and we do appreciate them as well. I'd be amiss if I didn't say that. However, we do request that you refrain from any disrespectful comments. So once again, welcome to tonight's meeting. We just went over our opening procedures, and we're going to continue with a few logistical items. We'll then proceed with a summary of the first public meeting, some of which you attended on October 8th, 2024. We'll then review our future conditions projections, which lay the foundation for our development of alternatives and eventual alternatives analysis down the line. We'll review the issues, opportunities, and constraints we summarized as part of our work. We're then going to move into a preliminary discussion of alternatives development, some ideas that we've put together, These are draft alternatives for discussion. Before we get too far in this process, we want your feedback. We'll then outline next steps following this meeting and open up the floor to a broader discussion during the public comment period. Tonight's meeting is about the Newton Corner long-term planning study. This is an effort to develop and analyze long-term means to improve transportation conditions at Newton Corner. As many of you are likely aware, MassDOT is also working with the City of Newton on short and medium-term changes to Newton Corner, which is being carried out as a separate project. Immediate safety improvements were implemented in the fall of 2024, and a report was published in December 2024 outlining next steps for that. If you'd like more information on that project, the short and medium-term work, please visit the website listed here, mass.gov/Newton Corner Improvements Project, hyphens between those final words. More information and the report are on that website. Or you can fill out the MassDOT contact form, also on mass.gov, if you want to submit feedback and questions about that or the short-term work. Tonight, we're here to talk about the long-term planning study. And continuing on, we just want to reiterate our study goals, just a reminder, refresher before we continue. As we think about the work we're doing for this planning study, we have 5 overarching study goals. The goals are not in any particular order. We use them to guide our thought process. The goals for this study are to improve access, safety, and mobility for all, reconnect Newton's neighborhoods, enhance quality of life, promote sustainable transportation options, and develop actionable recommendations. These goals have been further fleshed out into objectives for specificity, and the full documentation of those goals and objectives can be found on the study website. We would also like to briefly review our study process. This is a conceptual planning study that will result in a plan and recommendations for long-term potential changes to Newton Corner. Right now, we're in alternatives development. That's where the orange star pretty much in the middle of that diagram is, right by define, screen, engage, vet. We're beginning to develop concepts. Tonight is one of our first touch points for that. The alternatives that we're presenting today are preliminary ideas for your feedback. After tonight's meeting, we will incorporate your feedback and move toward alternatives analysis. At that point, we're going to evaluate the potential effects of 6 distinct alternatives and discuss them with you as well as our advisory working group. And now I'm going to pass it over to Christine.
Thank you, Patrick. I'm Christine Triarchis, the project manager from VHB for this study, and I'm going to give a brief summary of what we heard at the public meeting back in October. So at our first public meeting held October 8th, we had over 50 members of the public attend. We asked attendees to respond to the question, if you could envision the future of Newton Corner, what word would you use to describe it? The word cloud that you see on your screen represents the responses that we received, and you can see themes of safer, connected, accessible, and community were our most prevalent responses that we heard. After the presentation, we received about 30 questions and comments during the Q&A period with themes of traffic and infrastructure improvements, accessibility and connectivity, environmental and social impacts, and economic development. I'm now going to hand it over to Matt Duranlo to review the future conditions analysis.
Thank you, Christine. I'm Matt Duranlo with VHB, and I'm the mobility lead for this study. Tonight, I'm going to give a short summary on the future conditions analysis. Prior to developing alternatives, we projected out to a future year of 2050 to understand mobility, environmental, and land use projections in the future if no alternatives are implemented. Utilizing a horizon year of 2050 does not mean that changes will not be made until then. A timeline of possible implementation will be developed as the study progresses later in the year. While the study team conducted a thorough evaluation and analysis of existing conditions, tonight I'm just going to provide a high-level overview. The full future conditions analysis will be documented. To determine the future growth, the study team used the Central Transportation Planning Staff, or CTPS's, statewide travel demand model for the year 2050. Based on the model, population and employment are both anticipated to increase by about 10% in the study area by 2050. The largest population and employment growth is projected in the Allston-Brighton area, which is expected to see population grow by 20% and employment grow by 15% by 2050. We also completed a review of currently known development projects in the planning or proposal stage, and we found that there are over 5,000 residential units and 6 million square feet of commercial space that is currently in the development pipeline in the study area. We also coordinated with local municipalities and agencies to anticipate changes to the transit and roadway network. On the transit side, there are several improvements currently under development, such as the bus network redesign and the Newton commuter rail station's accessibility improvements. As many of you are aware, funding for the Newtonville commuter rail station improvements was awarded late last year. We understand that transit will play an important role in moving residents and workers around the study area, and all of these transit improvements are incorporated into our 2050 future projections. Our future projections also include proposed roadway infrastructure investments. There are currently several roadway improvements under development in the study area, including the Leo Birmingham Parkway reconstruction, the North Beacon Street at Soldiers Field Road roadway realignment, the Washington Street pilot in Newton, and the Watertown Square area plan in Watertown, to name a few. A common theme we found in these proposed improvements is that they are primarily focused on improving safety and enhancing multimodal accommodations, as opposed to increasing vehicular capacity. On the active transportation side, we identified several new and proposed facilities for bicyclists, such as new infrastructure on North Beacon Street and Western Avenue in Brighton, on Mount Auburn Street in Watertown, and on Washington Street in Newton. Most of these new facilities will improve bicycle connections in the east-west direction. However, based on the currently proposed improvements, there are still expected to be gaps in the future network in the north-south direction, including across I-90 and connecting to and from the Charles River pathways. With the proposed land use changes and known infrastructure improvements, we then reviewed the anticipated volume and ridership growth in the study area. Using the CTPS statewide travel demand model, which includes the known transit and roadway improvements I just talked about, and calibrating it based on known development projects, we found that transit ridership is expected to increase by 12 to 28%, and vehicle volumes are expected to increase by 6 to 13% in the local study area by 2050. Transit ridership is anticipated to grow quicker than vehicle volumes due to improved transit infrastructure and limited capacity on the roadway network for additional demand. However, the overall mode shares by 2050 are not expected to dramatically shift, as current network users are not anticipated to substantially alter their mode choices. With the projected increase in vehicle volumes associated with the new residents and workers traveling through the study area, traffic operations in the local study area are expected to deteriorate by 2050. If left unaddressed, this growth will impact reliability, potentially leading to increased congestion or further extending the commuter peak periods. The final future conditions element we want to highlight tonight are the future environmental considerations. The study area faces significant risks in the future from extreme temperature fluctuations, increased precipitation, and flooding along the Charles River. And by 2050, Massachusetts is expected to experience significant temperature increases. It is important to remember these environmental considerations as we progress into the alternatives development. And now I'll hand it back to Christine to talk about the issues, opportunities, and constraints.
Thank you, Matt. As part of this study process, we are looking at issues, opportunities, and constraints to flag as we dive into alternatives development. We began this process back in existing conditions and shared with you a snapshot of themes related to existing conditions back in October. These were based on a review of our existing conditions data and analysis, previous studies completed, and input from our working group. We've since added, based on our future conditions evaluation and public comments received, including through our online mapping tool. If you haven't had a chance to visit our virtual meeting room and take the survey, please feel free to use the QR code on your screen to do so. Here's a summary of the issues, opportunities, and constraints. This is not a complete list, but rather a highlight of some key takeaways. While we've already highlighted safety, there are persistent and well-known safety issues. Newton Corner is a high crash location with difficult merges and confusing travel patterns. Like much of the Commonwealth, our study area is vulnerable to climate change and is anticipated to face temperature increases and flooding near the Charles River. Many of the intersections within our study area have documented accessibility shortfalls that should be addressed through alternatives. There are opportunities to leverage the existing and potential future MBTA transit services in the area, providing clear connections to bus and commuter rail services. Similarly, we have opportunities to help connect bicyclists and pedestrians to the existing Charles River pathways. While these connections are currently just a short bike or walk from Newton Corner, they are currently not very comfortable or very direct routes, leaving opportunities for improvement. From an environmental standpoint, we have an opportunity to expand green infrastructure to help reduce heat island effect, improve public health, and manage stormwater. Our study area is also home to natural, historic, and archaeological resources to consider. The Charles River is nearby, and Newton neighborhoods are known for their historic character. Between Route 128 and Boston, there are limited highway exits, which means Newton Corner has to process a significant amount of vehicle traffic. The I-90 corridor and the MBTA rail line currently act as a barrier for north-south mobility for all modes. And now we're going to move into alternative development, which comprises the bulk of this meeting. All the ideas we present today are preliminary and for brainstorming purposes. Following your feedback on these concepts, we will move towards developing final draft alternatives, which we will then analyze and evaluate in line with our evaluation criteria. We will run through all of these initial ideas, but we want to note that these slides will be available to view during our breakout room discussions as well. We're excited to hear from you on if these align with what you've been envisioning. We've organized initial alternative ideas into 3 parts. The first is what we're calling supportive elements. These are elements that should be considered under all alternatives. Next are alternative components. These are individual components that can then be layered onto each other to develop full alternative packages. And finally, we have a few examples of how these could be layered together. We understand that there are many different combinations, and these are just a few examples to spark conversation. First, I'm going to run through the supportive elements, and the first one is pedestrian and bicycle elements. Essentially, every alternative should be seeking to create new pedestrian and bike connections through Newton Corner, as well as to the existing Charles River pathways, seeking to develop on-road bicycle accommodations, but especially find opportunities for separated bicycle lanes. We've also included placemaking here, creating an inviting pedestrian environment that makes Newton Corner feel like more of a destination. Next are transit elements. These are aimed at finding opportunities to incorporate transit signal priority, enhancing connections to existing services, such as the buses and the Newtonville station that will be going through upcoming improvements. Finally, are safety elements. These include trying to provide conventional and straightforward intersections for motorists, including evaluating where roundabouts may be appropriate to reduce conflict points, as well as adding fully accessible pedestrian accommodations and improving lighting. Now I will hand it over to Matt to discuss the alternative components.
Thank you, Christine. Today, as Christine said, we have 16 different potential alternative components that we're going to touch upon. These represent an initial list we developed based on previous feedback we've received, and we anticipate that additional components may be considered based on feedback from the public tonight. These individual alternative components can be layered upon each other to develop full concepts that will be presented at the next meeting. And as Christine mentioned, she'll present 3 potential examples after this, after I go through these components. As I go through each component, I know it might be a little difficult to fully digest everything that I'm about to present. Right now, I just want to introduce each of these components, and then we can dig into them a little deeper in the breakout rooms where all of the slides will be available. So getting into it, our first alternative component is looking at two-directional travel in Newton Corner. To minimize weaving and increase safety, this would allow bi-directional vehicle travel on roadways in Newton Corner, such as on Washington Street, north and south of I-90, and on the bridges over I-90. This is an idea that we've heard in the past from the public, and it's likely that this component will be incorporated into future full concepts, either on one roadway segment or on multiple roadway segments. Another idea we have heard is the consideration of installing roundabouts. Installing roundabouts can increase safety and simplify intersection operations. The next stage of the alternatives analysis will evaluate what locations would be appropriate for roundabout control. This graphic shows potential roundabout locations, but the analysis evaluation will determine the best candidate locations, which may not be all of those that are shown on the graphic here, for example. Moving on to the next one, this next component would be a new bridge connecting Center Street south of I-90 with Center Street north of I-90. This would restore the historic roadway network of Newton Corner before the interstate was constructed, allowing continuous through traffic on Center Street. A new bridge at this location could provide bi-directional travel for vehicles, pedestrians, and bicyclists, and would help to simplify overall operations. And on to number 4, this component here would close the existing I-90 westbound on-ramp and relocate it to a new location west of Newton Corner. Moving the I-90 westbound on-ramp would simplify operations at the current intersection. However, we will need to evaluate the feasibility of a new interstate location west of the current location and understand how that would tie into the roadway network. On a similar note to the last component, this component here looks at closing the existing I-90 eastbound off-ramp and relocating the off-ramp to a new location west of Newton Corner. The existing off-ramp provides limited queue storage, and shifting it to the west could potentially provide space for a longer ramp. An idea shown on this graphic would be to have a new off-ramp connect to Church Street with a realigned Richardson Street providing access to Washington Street. However, any ramp relocation would need to consider the right-of-way impacts and the feasibility of construction. The next few components are going to look at enhancing transit accommodations in Newton Corner. This component here looks at repurposing the existing Washington Street westbound bridge as a dedicated transitway. Now, I know this alternative needs a little more detailed explaining. If a new Center Street to Center Street bridge was to be connected, as I talked about earlier in component number 3 and showed as the dashed blue line, there is potential to repurpose the existing westbound bridge for a different use, which is shown as the solid red line on the graphic here. Here we are showing a transitway, which could serve as a hub for all buses traveling Newton Corner and would be open only to bus traffic. The benefit of providing a bus hub and transitway in this location is that it aligns with the routing of the MBTA bus route 57, which is a key bus route and is expected to run every 6 minutes in the future with bus network redesign in place. Moving on to component number 7, this one considers creating a bus transit hub in Newton Corner while maintaining the current bridges for vehicular use. Shown here is an idea to deck over I-90 to provide a new mobility hub that would provide passengers with a comfortable place to wait and create one centralized location to connect with additional transportation services. This component, as shown, would allow for bidirectional transit travel on the existing Washington Street westbound bridge. On the graphic as shown, separate stops would be provided in the inbound and outbound directions, and a safe pedestrian crossing would be installed connecting riders to both sides. Another possible component is a potential commuter rail station in Newton Corner. Currently, the Worcester line of the commuter rail travels through the study area, but trains do not stop in Newton Corner. The nearest stop is at Newtonville, approximately 1 mile west. Based on coordination with the MBTA, any future decisions about implementation will need to be evaluated holistically from a multimodal perspective, and especially with regard to the way it impacts service through Newton and along the entire Worcester Line corridor. Shown on the graphic is a possible potential station location with pedestrian access provided from both sides of I-90. This next component here now involves decking over I-90. There's potential to use decking to provide space for multimodal uses, bike paths, transit bus stops, mobility hubs, additional green space, and/or community space. Decking could also be used to help create a village center in Newton Corner and provide a more welcoming environment for small businesses. All right, now we have a few components that focus on pedestrian and bicycle infrastructure. This component here looks at repurposing the existing Washington Street eastbound bridge. Similar to the transitway component I showed earlier, if a new Center Street to Center Street bridge is constructed, there is potential to repurpose the existing eastbound bridge for a different use. Here we are showing a pedestrian bicycle only bridge, which could provide a safe and comfortable way for pedestrians and bicyclists to cross I-90 separated from vehicular traffic. Another component could be to construct a new pedestrian bicycle only bridge over I-90 while maintaining the existing vehicular bridges and roadway network. This would separate pedestrians and bicyclists from vehicle traffic and provide a safe and comfortable way for them to cross I-90 and the railroad tracks. The exact location of a pedestrian bicycle bridge would be evaluated, but at the location shown on this graphic, the bridge would tie into Center Street north and south of I-90, providing a continuous north-south connection for pedestrians and bicyclists. Next, we looked at a couple of ways to better connect Newton Corner to the Charles River pathways. This component here would create a neighborhood greenway along Charles Bank Road, connecting Newton Corner to the Charles River in close walking and biking distance. The neighborhood greenway would be shared with vehicular traffic, and traffic calming measures could be implemented to ensure slow vehicle speeds. Another potential way to connect to the Charles River pathways could be with a shared use path on St. James Street. This would likely require converting St. James Street to one way for vehicular travel to provide space for the shared use path for pedestrians and bicyclists, but it would provide a direct connection from the south side of I-90 to the north side of I-90 for peds and bikes. This shared use path could either follow Charles Bank Road to Nenantum Road, as vehicular traffic does today, or it could follow a new connection to Nenantum Road along St. James Terrace, as shown in number 3 on the graphic. All right. Now, this next alternative component looks at creating a dedicated pedestrian bicycle bridge that would connect Newton Corner to the Charles River along I-90 and along the train tracks. The distance of this bridge would be approximately 1/3 of a mile. If this alternative were to progress, the study team will need to evaluate the feasibility of constructing a bridge in this location, as there is quite a grade difference leading down to the Charles River. All right, only a couple more to show. I know this has been a lot so far, but looking beyond Newton Corner, this next alternative component would construct full interstate access at West Newton with a new eastbound off-ramp and a westbound on-ramp. This would provide additional access to from the west on I-90, and it would relieve reliance on the Newton Corner interchange. If this alternative were to progress, the study team will need to evaluate constructability and the potential right-of-way implications. All right, and now the final one I'm going to talk about tonight. This is full interstate access in Brighton in the DCR roadway area. Now, this has been included in previous planning studies for Newton Corner, and it could include full interstate access or partial interstate access in this general area. However, there would likely be constructability issues and potential impact to DCR property, including to protected parkland. All right, now that we've talked a lot about the different individual components, I'm going to hand it back over to Christine to show some potential ways that we can combine these all together.
Thank you, Matt. Now, as Matt mentioned, I'm going to provide some examples of how we could combine these components. I want to reiterate again that these are just 3 examples of seemingly endless possibilities, but we wanted to develop a few examples to spark conversation this evening. We're really interested in your feedback during our breakout rooms on these, as well as any additional ideas or suggestions you have. The first combined alternative example is really utilizing the existing infrastructure and right-of-way, but considering 2-directional travel on all roadways. This would maintain the existing bridge locations, but look to simplify movements, minimize weaving, and improve safety. As an added layer to this, we could also consider reallocating right-of-way to accommodate non-vehicular modes as well. Our second example provides a new bridge connection north-south, reconnecting Center Street. This has been combined with relocating the westbound on-ramp further westbound in order to simplify the intersection in the northeast quadrant. We have then layered on components to repurpose the existing bridges, one into a pedestrian and bicycle shared use pathway, and one into a transit way that could even support a bus hub. This alternative also includes considering 2-directional travel on Washington Street, both north and south of I-90. Another added way to achieve enhanced pedestrian and bicycle accommodations would be to utilize Charles Bank Road as a neighborhood greenway connecting to the Charles River and Nonantum Road. And our final example provides that same new bridge connection north-south, reconnecting Center Street, and has also been combined with relocating the westbound on-ramp in order to again simplify that intersection in the northeast quadrant. In this instance, we've then layered on a commuter rail station on the north side of I-90, as well as repurposing the eastbound Washington Street Bridge into a transit way for buses. This also includes considering 2-directional travel on Washington Street, both north and south of I-90. And in an effort to achieve enhanced pedestrian and bicycle accommodations, this option provides decking over I-90 for a shared use path and green space, as well as utilizing St. James Ave for a shared use path connecting over to Charles River and Nonantum Road. And with that, we are now going to split up into breakout sessions so we can hear feedback from all of you on these initial concepts. We're going to divide you into 6 groups and assign you into a breakout room. Each room will discuss all of the alternative ideas presented, and we will have the slides available for discussion in each room. A study team member will be facilitating each breakout room, helping you to lead the discussion and take notes. We'll be in the sessions for roughly 30 minutes. And then you will be invited back into the main room to discuss next steps. Patrick, our MassDOT project manager, will remain in the main meeting room in case someone joins late or needs to rejoin.
Okay, I'll work on getting those set up. You should all receive a prompt on your screen shortly. It might take a moment. If you're not seeing a prompt, just one moment. I have to click a button. Thank you for your patience. Good evening. Welcome to the meeting. My name is Patrick Snyder. I work for MassDOT. Okay. Welcome back, everyone. Thank you for sharing your thoughts and feedback in the breakout rooms. We're going to close out our presentation a little bit with a discussion of our schedule, and then we'll open it up to broader discussion and questions, etc. And we can talk as a group. So just transitioning to a reminder of our study schedule. After tonight's public meeting, we're going to continue to refine alternatives based on your feedback. As you can see on the screen, we are here, public number 2, sort of over to the right, top side of this diagram, alternatives development. That's where we are right now. We're going to have a few more meetings in the coming months as we continue our work and move into alternatives analysis. We're going to move toward presenting distinct combined alternatives later this spring with our advisory working group, and eventually we'll have another public meeting. This will include analysis on how the distinct alternatives perform for future anticipated traffic levels, transit, pedestrian, and bicycle connectivity, neighborhood cohesion, and other evaluation criteria. That is all listed on the study website. All those details are broken down. We'll be taking, some of the components that you saw tonight, some of the things that you gave feedback on, voiced support for, we'll be working those into distinct alternatives. Over the course of the study, we'll have 3 more working group meetings and 2 more public meetings at, those milestones once we have our deliverables ready to go. When we schedule those meetings, we'll send email notification to a subscriber list when those are scheduled. If you're not subscribed to that yet, we have a few slides later, a website that shows our website where you can sign up for that email list. Moving forward, we're going to open it up to a broader public comment period. If you have wider questions, comments about this process, things that you would like to share in the group. So moving forward to the next slide, we have an overview of our procedures, which I'm just going to run through very quickly. I will say that we like to start our public comment periods by giving the opportunity for elected officials or members of their staff in attendance to speak and give comment. For those of you who are joining elected officials, members of your staff who'd like to speak, just click the raise hand button or enter something in the Q&A button, bottom right of your screen. We'll be happy to recognize you. For other attendees, you are also welcome to use the question and answer box at the bottom of your screen. If it's not showing up, click more. There's 3 dots, and you should be able to select Q&A. You can submit written questions. Like I said, you can also click the raised hand button to be recognized and then unmute. If you're joining on the phone, you can hit *9. We ask that you please state your name and affiliation before your question for the record. Try and share 1 comment or question at a time and limit it to 2 minutes. If you want to speak more than that, you're welcome to rejoin the queue once others have had the opportunity to speak. This is a recorded meeting and everything here tonight is part of the public record. So please use these functions for project-related business only. Once again, are there any elected officials or members of their staff in attendance who would like to speak? Seeing none at this time, I see a raised hand from Robin Boger.
Good evening, Patrick. I
Hello.
wanted to make sure that as part of the written record, you receive the strong negative reaction we had to option number 5. And that was the option where there would be an eastbound exit built to the west that would come out on Church Street. And there was objection raised to that for 3 reasons. 1, Church Street is a residential street, and we've always been worried about the amount of traffic on it. But 2, it's also the location of a fire station. It seems rather incongruous to combine a fire station with a Mass Pike exit. And perhaps even more, well, equally as dangerous, it's the exit for the YMCA, and where there are many children and many programs and on-street parking. So we just really would like you to think long and hard about the many reasons as to why that's a very bad idea. Thank you.
Thank you, Robin. And we'll keep that in mind as we move forward and distill everything into distinct alternatives. So thank you for pointing out those reasons. If anyone else would like to speak, just click the raised hand button at the bottom left of your screen.
Patrick,
You can
I'm
also
sorry.
use the Q&A
Forgive me, I
box.
don't have a raised hand button, but I'm just
Oh,
gonna.
I'm sorry that's not showing up. Marianne,
Yeah,
you're welcome to speak. Thank you.
thank you. I introduced myself in our small group, but I'll introduce myself again to the larger group here. I'm Marianne Burke with the Burke Funeral Home in West Newton. Your off-ramp essentially goes through my building. And so I'm certainly raising an objection to that plan. Your slide 15 would destroy a neighborhood and small business, and not to mention the churches in the area, the school that is in that parking lot. So I can't express our concern greatly enough that slide 15 would be an absolute disaster to an entire community of West Newton.
Thank you for your comment, Marianne.
Hmm.
We will keep that in mind. The next raised hand that I saw was from Serge. Serge, if you'd like to unmute.
Sure enough. Thank you. Serge Delkovich, resident of Newton Highlands, very interested in this process and someone who's used this this off-ramp for many, many years. I just want to speak in support of all the work that you guys have done. You've done an amazing job, and thank you so much for considering all these different alternatives. In particular, I would like to support 1, 2, 3, 4, and 8. The new bridge connecting Center Street, which is alternative 3, is really the glue that will keep this whole project together and reconnect the neighborhood and improve safety for pedestrians and bicyclists. The 2-directional travel will increase the walkability and vitality of the village center in the future. The roundabouts will increase safety, and it's just a matter of figuring out where the best location would be. And then I'm really glad to see that you're considering relocating the westbound ramp, not to West Newton, not there, but just a few hundred yards down, so that it gets it out of the actual, village center and makes all these other things possible. And then number 8 is the commuter rail station. And like I said in the breakout group, I'm thinking of it like an electric train every 5 to 10 minutes that gets you in and out of Boston very quickly. Not the commuter rail we have now, but the commuter rail that I think we'll have in the future. And then I would like to absolutely speak against number 5 for reasons that were already stated, but also because it will just dump a lot more traffic into Newton Corner, which is not what we want. And 15 and 16, which involves creating new roadway infrastructure and ramps in Brighton and West Newton, is just a terrible idea. It would ruin both of those neighborhoods, as was stated just a few minutes ago. But thank you for all of this. And when you look at those examples, option B, when there were the 3 examples, option B with the rail station, which is in option C, if you could add the rail station into option B, that would be really awesome.
Thank you, Serge. Yeah, one of our goals for this study is reconnect Newton's neighborhood. So a large part of that is, thinking about the access that you have all there as residents, local business owners, officials. We will bear this in mind, and we certainly are striving to minimize any potential impacts, and we'll keep all of this feedback as we move forward. The next raised hand I saw was from Ned Codd.
Yeah, thank you again very much for hosting the meeting and executing the study. And I think that the alternative components, show a lot of creativity, and there are a lot of things to like in those. I would say to the points that other people have made, in terms of any changes, any new ramp connectivity, we need to be very mindful of impacts to local streets and any adjacent land uses that would be impacted. We're really trying to use this process to fix Newton Corner. We definitely don't want to do any additional harm with any of these alternatives. And then beyond that, I think we need to think carefully about how these alternatives are put together how the components are put together in sort of combined unified alternatives, and making sure that improved pedestrian bicycle transit access is incorporated, is paramount in all of the combined alternatives, and then figuring out different ways of getting the new bridges or reconfigured bridges, one way, two way, reconfigured intersections, getting those to kind of work together in optimal ways of addressing the existing traffic flows.
Thank you, Ned, for your comments from the city. Next raised hand I saw was from Daniel Campbell. If you'd like to unmute, you're welcome to speak.
Yes. First, compliments to the team here. The big ideas, being creative, it's great to see. Also just very welcoming. So thank you. I'm a resident, Washington Street, south of the interstate. With all the combined examples, each one had that Washington Street, south of the interstate, turning into a two-way, and currently it's intensively a one-way. At least a portion of it is. So essentially that change with double traffic, but I think the thing I want to point out is when you look at traffic volume, please also look at speeds. Washington Street is 25 miles per hour. Folks do not go 25. It's much higher than that. And if you double traffic and they're going that fast, it's just, I worry about safety. And just keep in mind, Tremont's 35, has large buildings on it. That's all, but you're doing a great job, so thank you.
For your comments. Thank you. Next raised hand I saw was from Harvey Shore. If you'd like to unmute. Harvey, if you would like to give comment or
Yes.
ask question. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah.
Well, I had an issue with Serge in our breakout group. I just want to repeat the counterpoint for the larger group. And that concerns travel on I-90, which when you're traveling eastbound, the right-hand lane of I-90 is used as an off-ramp, effectively backing up traffic sometimes as far as Walnut Street, which is just about a mile away. There's a clear need for additional storage capacity in the breakout lane, just as more storage capacity was provided for I-90 traveling westbound as it approaches Newton Corner. I mean, the ramp length has become enormous. Now, this is clearly, from a technological standpoint, a constructability standpoint, much easier, but it should be clear, and I hope not lost as the study proceeds, that there is a critical need from the standpoint of safety for a longer exit ramp traveling eastbound on I-90.
Thank you, Harvey. Thank you for mentioning that. Next raised hand I saw was from Madeline. And then Nancy, I do see that you're putting your hand up in the air. I can call on you after.
Thank you, Patrick. I'm Madeline Sorensen. I live in Newton Corner on a side street off of Center Street. So I travel in this area sometimes multiple times a day. I'd like to advocate for the decking idea, not necessarily all that was on the slide that you had, but just some decking. For me, it's not just a matter of getting from one side of the turnpike to the other. We need to be able to do that in a safe way. But it would also be lovely to have some green space and the opportunity to have small business or something so that people, and not have cars there, but just be able to walk across there and have spaces to gather, have spaces to meet people. That would just be a lovely idea, and I would hate to have that be sidelined. I would really like to advocate for that.
Thank you, Madeline. And I see a thumbs up coming in from Daniel Scales. Nancy Kelly, I saw you did a little wave up there.
Yep, thank you. I just want to say, first of all, thanks to MassDOT for a lot of really great ideas and for this really wonderful presentation tonight. I just want to, in my breakout group, just to reiterate what I said there. I am very much opposed to alternative number 15 and totally agree with Mary Ann Burke. I happen to live across the street from the Burke Funeral Home. We are a residential neighborhood, and as well as a small business of the funeral home. We have a school, we have a church. I just think that's number 15 is a bad idea. And to just echo what I believe Daniel said about the speed of the vehicle speed on Washington Street is kind of out of control. And so I'd like just to let MassDOT hear that from another Washington Street, West Newton resident, that we're always asking the city to do something about controlling the speed along Washington Street as people try to make their way down and get as quickly as possible onto Mass Pike eastbound. It's a dangerous situation. So I just want to say that. Thank you.
Thank you, Nancy. Yeah, something that we've been hearing throughout, and one of the main reasons why this long-term planning study came about was because safety. Newton Corner is one of the highest crash areas in the state, and it's very difficult to travel through for people who are driving, but even those who aren't driving, who might decide to bike. I think most people decide not to bike through there. And walk through there as well. It is very dangerous. So safety is definitely a main focus of this study. And as we progress through more defined alternatives, we hope to show a little bit more of a focus on, okay, here's where specific pedestrian improvements will be made. For anyone who hasn't spoken yet, again, you're welcome to click the raise hand button, or also the question and answer box at the bottom of your screen. I know that might be hard to find. You might have to click more. I'm sorry if it's not showing up. You're welcome to unmute as well. Robin, it looks like you wanted to speak again.
Yes, thank you. And again, I should say I'm Robin Boger from the Newton Corner Neighborhood Association. I'm sorry I forgot to say that the first time. I asked a question in the breakout room, which I was told really should have been asked here. And after hearing Ned speak, I realized it ties into what he was saying. And that is the difference between city streets and state highway responsibilities. Certain things like the mid-range plans are sitting at the city now, because actually those deal with city streets. I'm wondering to what extent this layering of responsibilities impacts the decision-making process and the length of time it will take for something to be done, depending on different amounts of city streets versus state highway needs. So and if you start involving the train and the railroads and the buses, please explain to us the process whereby decisions are made. How sensitive are decisions to the components that will go into the final product? Do you stop and say, oh, too many city streets, we'd better back off, or too many different players? What process will you use and the data and the process, because it says, I reviewed your documents today, that it's very data-based. How will you go about deciding, reducing all the options you have here now to 5 or 6? Thank you.
Thank you. I think that's a great question, Robin, a great clarifying question. And I think there are a few different ways that I can answer it. The first one coming to mind is that, we're here tonight to get your feedback. We had a working group meeting a few weeks ago to get feedback as well. The working group includes, the various agencies and municipalities that have jurisdictions in this area as well. The city of Newton, the city of Watertown, the city of Boston, DCR sits on the working group as well. You know, we are engaged with them throughout this process. They're aware that we're carrying out this long-term planning study. You know, like you said, depending on the different locations, be it in Newton Corner, be it in Brighton at Soldiers Field Road, there are multiple entities involved in this. These are entities that we are in communication with and who are aware that we're carrying out this process. As we go on, we're going to keep having these touch points to talk about feedback. Okay, is this realistic? Is this something that we can achieve? And, you know, Nikki, I think this is an opportunity to advance to the next slide because I am going to plug my email here. You know, to the broader public, you're welcome to reach out to me anytime, but, you know, to my point, I'm also in communication with DCR, the City of Newton. We talk sometimes, but if anyone would like to speak more frequently, you're welcome to, because, you know, Robin, you do make a good point about this being a process that involves quite a bit of coordination and, you know, making decisions together. And I would say that that's what we're here doing tonight, and that's what we're doing throughout this process. And I don't have another part of your question was about timeline. I don't have a timeline right now, but we will have a clear idea about that as the months progress. I see a raised hand from Deborah Jackson. Deborah, if you'd like to unmute, you're welcome to speak. Hello.
Hello, good evening. Thank you
Good evening.
for recognizing me. Thank you for gathering us today. I would also like to just be on record against Alternative 15 that relocates the on-ramps, exit ramps in West Newton. You say one of the goals of this project is reuniting or reunifying Newton neighborhoods. The Black community in Newton, in West Newton, was completely destroyed by the Mass Pike. And by putting the exit ramps in West Newton, you will go through the same Black neighborhood that was irreparably harmed by the Mass Pike, and you will take out the rest of it. And so I feel like we need to look for other alternatives that keep the Black community in West Newton intact. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Deborah. Thank you for bringing that up. Thank you for making those points.
Did you
You know,
hear?
definitely, I think there have been two themes that came out of tonight, at least two major alternative things that I've been hearing, and a large one of them has been avoiding, expanding, creating new highway ramps that are not there already. That is something that we will bear in mind as we continue and put these together. We are incorporating your feedback, and something that I heard in a couple of breakout rooms on a separate note, but I am mentioning it, is pedestrian bridges, pedestrian safety, making sure that everyone has safety, but also keeping, you know, any potential impacts of alternatives to a minimum. So we will bear all this in mind as we continue. I think I did hear a voice out of the ether somewhere. If anyone else was looking to speak, you can click the raise hand button or turn on video, give a little wave. We're going to be wrapping up shortly because it is 8:02. This meeting is scheduled until 8 o'clock. But I'll run through the slide right here, right now, because there are a couple of ways that you can engage with us and submit your comments after tonight's meeting and through the rest of the process. We have a study website where we post notification that these meetings are happening. You can sign up for updates there as well. We send out emails when we schedule these meetings. On that website is also linked a virtual meeting room where you can submit site-specific comments, and we catalog additional materials and comments that you make. You can also reach out, planning@dot.state.ma.us, and I think it might be on the next slide, but an additional email you can reach me at directly is patrick.l.snyder@dot.state.ma.us. Once again, we do have that study website. It's mass.gov/Newton Corner Long-Term Planning Study, hyphens between those final words. You can also reach it from the QR code here. You're able to take a snap of that on a digital device. Otherwise, again, please reach out anytime. We will post additional meetings as those opportunities are available. Thank you very much for being here tonight, and we look forward to speaking again soon.